What's up, everyone? Today we're interviewing Mr. Jonathan Brush, the president and CEO of Unbound. Unbound is an educational organization designed for high school and post high school students, especially those that come from a homeschooling background. Now, they help young adults grow in leadership, decision making, confidence, life skills, not only just academics. Now, Mr. Brush himself is a homeschooling graduate, but on top of that, he's also a homeschooling dad of 6 kids. Today's conversation is absolutely amazing. I hope you guys love it. Let's get into it.
Hello.
Hello, I'm so sorry for being late. I had a
Oh, that's fine.
little personnel crisis at another business that we run. That,
No
of course,
worries.
happened 2 minutes before I was going to get on. So I was like, should I answer this or not? And so I did, and then it made me late. So I apologize.
No
No
worries at all,
problem.
man.
So good to meet you all. Thanks
Yes,
for
sir.
your
I
graciousness
made
and
it.
letting me come a little late. So
No
No
worries.
problem.
No worries. Just so you know, too, we do record these, and then we share them with the community. And if
okay,
you would like us to send you the link after, or if anything like that, we can do that as well.
okay. Well, that's great. So
All right. So, I saw that you were a former homeschooler yourself.
I am. So I'm just as socially awkward as the rest of y'all. So
Yes,
glad,
sir.
glad that we can all practice our socialization skills together here. So
Yes. Hopefully, we can get a little better at it.
yeah. No, by the end of this interview, I'm hoping to be better for sure.
What have you seen change from like when you were, because I know even from when we were homeschooled till now, it's definitely changed a lot. But back in your day, I'm imagining it was even more like forbidden and considered weird as it is today.
Yeah. So to me, it's really funny. So I have children, they're homeschooled. And so it's really, you try not to do the whole like back in my day type of thing. But what, and first of all, can you guys still hear me?
Yes,
Mhm.
sir. We hear you
Okay.
great.
When you said you recorded, I decided to pull the better mic over, but then sometimes you break something on Zoom when that happens. Um, so when I was homeschooled, we still had two kind of interesting things. We had to memorize our home phone number, which was still a thing then, of course,
Mhm.
and HSLDA's phone number
Yes,
because we
yes.
weren't sure what was going to happen. And we had truant officer drills. So like there was a place to hide if they came, we were in the house, and there was a place to hide if they came, we were outside. And when I say hide, it was more like, you have to don't open the door to stranger type thing. And so
Mhm.
that was weird. And then we used to tell mom, please just don't take us to the grocery store between like 9 and 2. You know what I mean? Like we don't want to have to explain again what we're doing. And so that was really interesting because I remember vividly constantly being stopped by strangers, and that's why I wasn't at school. And
Yep.
my kids are never stopped and asked that question. And when they say they're homeschooled, people are like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And of course, when I was growing up, they were like, is that legal? And we're like, maybe. so, and so that's some of the big difference. And then, of course, I didn't meet anybody else who's homeschooled until I was in high school. And then
Oh,
I was the
no way.
first homeschooled student admitted to the college I went to. Um,
Wow.
but that turned out to be fine because the second one was not only beautiful, but a 4.0 student, and I married her. So that worked out really.
There you go.
Good job,
So college
man.
is a good success for me. But yeah, so those are some of the really big changes. And now, of course, it's, I guess it's not mainstream, but it's not like, everybody's heard of it, they know it, and they generally have a good positive
Hmm.
impression of it. So that's fun. So
Um, that's weird because we just took on a partner, or she's gonna be a tutor for us, Miss Hannah, and she was saying that her mom wouldn't even allow her to go to the stores when she was homeschooled because she was so scared about something happening. So it is nice to see that it's more open, it's more welcoming these days. I do know that you're an author as well. Could you just kind of give the viewers a background of the books you've written, kind of what you do and all, and that way they can get familiar with you?
yeah, absolutely. So first of all, just to be honest, I am technically an author. I wouldn't say that's my strong suit. so,
Okay.
so I have a book called The Personal Triangle, and it was a synthesis of the things that we were learning in Unbound that people were always asking questions about. And so really it was a way for us to compile all that and put it together and be able to share it with people. So super proud of the book, very excited about it. But we're not talking about New York Times best-selling stuff here. So, but more it's the background of I've had this amazing opportunity to work in traditional and non-traditional higher education, having come through non-traditional education myself, and it's spanning that time frame when it was illegal, like we just talked about, to when it's,
Mhm.
if not mainstream, very popular and becoming more popular. And that's been a fun front row seat to see what works and what hasn't. And I feel like this intense responsibility, plus it's the way I get paid, to be able to share with people and say, look, this is the stuff that we're seeing. These are things that work, these things that don't work, and kind of point people with the right stuff, which I think in many ways is y'all's mission as well. We get to do it maybe in a little tighter focus in the sense that we work primarily with high school students and post high school students.
Okay.
So we can kind of specialize a little bit, which is fun. So
can you give just a little bit of a background on Unbound too, so that way they can kind of get more familiar with you guys?
yeah, so we say, as our tagline that Unbound trains young adults to thrive. And I picked that word. I don't know that I love thrive so much, is that I really wanted to rebel against this idea that your goal of growing up was to be successful, which I don't have any problems with, to be clear.
No,
But the cultural expectation of success is some version of being rich, famous, or powerful. Now, I'm always quick to say I don't have any problems with being rich, famous, or powerful either. I don't. It's not that I'm against those things, but I can say from experience that there's two things that most people don't understand about that. The first is rich, famous, or powerful is interesting because it's uncommon, which means it's hard. And so if your definition of I will make a difference when I become rich, famous, or powerful, if that's your definition of success, most of us aren't going to obtain fame, fortune, and power at that level, which means that you're doomed to a life of failure, which is silly, right? That's clearly that's not the way reality works. And the second is fame, fortune, and power are really powerful tools, but if you pursue them as an end goal, it's a very empty life, right? And so we wanted to say, hey, there's a different way to prepare. Let's talk about thriving, which is, accepting full responsibility for your life, knowing how to create value, prioritizing relationships, living resiliently, which means you understand the world's messed up, but also there's hope in this world, and being able to combine those things. And then from our perspective, also, kind of in light of eternity for the glory of God, that there's something bigger than ourselves that we're looking at. And so what I want to do then is create this atmosphere where we're telling people, hey, training for that means that whether you're rich, famous, or powerful or not, you get to live an exciting, meaningful, important, impactful life. But that doesn't happen accidentally. You do need to train for it, and you do need to have really good ability and preparation for that. And you're not going to get it in the traditional systems. So that's kind of the background. And then we've developed programs around that, so we get to specifically train for it. And it's really fun. And it's also successful to the point that I tell students, if you join our SEN, which is a post-high school program, so this is like a college alternative, and you're with us for 3 years, and you can do it for 1, 2, or 3 years. But if you do all 3 years and you earn all our certificates, then I guarantee that you'll get a job that pays more than a college graduate in your area, or we'll refund 3 years of tuition, all 3 years of tuition, the whole thing.
No way.
And I've never had anybody ask for a refund. And last year I had my entire graduating class employed, and we have like 80 opportunities around the country that are unfilled. And so my biggest problem is actually enough students, not enough opportunity. That's a measure of the fact that we work with really cool students, and we get to see, we get to combine some stuff that we've learned. So anyhow, a little longer than the thumbnail sketch, but just to give you some background there.
No, that's true, because also what we'll say all the time is we focus on setting the kids up for success, and success could be either homesteading with your family in the mountains, or it could be running a $100 million real estate business, whatever your idea of success is. But then what you touched on as well, having those relationships, being close to God, and understanding that, hey, this is your life, and it's not based on how much money you make, but what you're doing, where you're putting the value, where you're creating value for other people, and how you're affecting the other people around you. So, I mean, I'm right there with you, man. To have nobody ask for their money back means you guys got to be doing something right. I mean,
well, it's this fun place. It's a deliberate trap that we put ourselves in that says we have to get this right, because we can't afford to get people their tuition back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like we're just sitting on all this extra margin, right? And so I like that, because as our kids come into third year, we're looking at each one of those going, where are we going to get this kid hired? Because we have to get them hired, right? And not just that, where are we going to get them hired so they're like, this is cool, because we want them to be fulfilled in what they're doing. And so I like business situations where we're set up in those kind of pressure spots where we have to, I was a director of missions for a private selective liberal arts college for almost 11 years. Okay. And there's so much distortion there. And it's because of a lot of factors, not many of them nefarious, where, what you're doing doesn't have to have really any relationship to any kind of outcomes. There's this whole cultural idea that a college degree is worth all this stuff, and it's not, but you don't have to prove that. And, there's so much cultural velocity that you get people, whether you try hard or not. And I just really got disgusted with that whole idea that, the value that you were creating wasn't really connected to what people were expecting. And so in this case, we had this opportunity to say, we're either going to get this right, or we're going to go out of business. And it's constant. Like, if we ever get it wrong, we'll still go out of business. And so that kind of pressure has been, I say, fun, and I mean it. Like, I like that we have to really work hard at thinking. And it also means that what we did last year doesn't work this year. 3 years ago, nobody's talking about AI. Now, every one of my students is like, how does AI affect how I get employed? And we're like, well, we don't know either, but we have to figure it out because you'll hold us responsible in 3 years. so we have to pay attention. So.
Well, it's also the difference between you guys in college, where you guys are making it a sense to not only give them with the life skills, the education that they need, but to actually put them in that position when they graduate to go out, rather than colleges just, here's your diploma, your certificate, whatever. Go do what you got to do. Make sure you pay the debt. That's all it is with that. Since you guys work specifically more with like older kids and like postgraduate high school age, what are some ways that you found work best for them to build communication skills? Because for us, I mean, we focus on 4 pillars: health, education, communication, and finances. And I personally believe that your level of communication is going to be the cap of your life. So what do you guys do, or what do you believe they should do at that age to kind of gain those skills and become real confident and comfortable in their skin?
Yeah. So I think that there's this very ironic, sort of funny situation here where what they have to do is not complicated, but nobody else is doing it. So if you do it, then you get this massive advantage, right? And so what that is that one of the things, and you guys, and I know I think both of you are homeschooled. Is that correct? I was on the site, David, so I know you were, but okay. So if you're homeschooled, you can do lots of wrong in homeschooling, you can do lots of right. But almost always, if you do homeschooling, there's a drawdown of the pressure from peers, right? The peer pressure is absent or close to absent in most cases. There can be exceptions, right? But that's been my experience working with the homeschool community. And so what that means then is that there's 2 things. There's an absence of peer pressure. There's an increase in cross-generational contact. And consequently, there's almost always a lack of technology when it comes to things like social media and cell phones. Now, that doesn't mean across the board. It's just there's more prevalent than less, and there's less pressure to be completely involved in that kind of constant social media type world, right? Now, you can certainly mess this up as a homeschooler. You can, have your kid rely on that, all those things. But I'm just telling you as a warning here, because what happens and what I see is that most of the students I work with are very used to talking to people that are not just their age. And they are generally not fully addicted to social media. They can get there, but they've had a slower entrance into that world because the peer pressure hasn't been there. So consequently, they're used to talking to people. And so now we're kind of this weird thing where it's like, I don't really want to settle for just okay. I want to push to excellence. But what's interesting is just okay looks like excellence in a world where nobody's doing that. And so I have students that they just look you in the eye and talk to you, can carry on a conversation and have just some basic structures, like know how to ask questions and things like that. And, you have people go, whoa, that's totally different, because most of their peers have no ability to do that. So that comes down to this kind of principle that we have, which is, how do you prepare for these things? You do real things. Yep. And there's if I may just expand it one more level. And why is doing real things so important? Because real things have the potential for failure. And that's what life is actually like. And we have a traditional education system that says, whatever you do, don't fail. If you get less than 4.0, you can't go to college. If you get less than a 4.0, you can't go to grad school. And well, that only works in academia. That's the only place that actually matters. Yeah, you don't get to measure that simply anyplace else. And not only that, in a world where technology disrupts everything all the time, I mean, it's not like I'm going to get AI right. I mean, we're screwing it up all the time because we have no idea how it works or what it does. And it's lying to us half the time. There's all this stuff going on, right? And so it's like being able to train somebody to prepare for failure ends up being the essential piece there. Well, what's the best way to do that? Well, talking to people, because you'll occasionally make a fool of yourself. You'll put your foot in your mouth. You'll say something dumb. You'll get embarrassed. You'll have socialization problems, right? And so, but when you do that and you do it at an early age, which was normal until just yesterday, all of a sudden now that compounds, and a high school kid that's articulate and can have a conversation, man, they just have this massive advantage of everybody else, which is on one hand a little bit ridiculous, but it's also, it's like the tax system, right? It's ridiculous. You get a rebate for that, but as long as you can get it, you'd be dumb not to take it, right? It's the same kind of thing. So
without a doubt. And like you said, it's, especially for me, we run another business. When we hire on younger kids, we have to just explain to them like, hey, when you go to somebody's house and you're talking to a customer, you need to look them in the eye.
Right.
You need to give them a firm handshake. You need to be able to carry on the conversation with them. But these are things that people considered the homeschoolers would have. But in a sense, now all homeschoolers have these skills because, like you said, we're outside of the system, which has given us that interaction. Throughout the day, we are talking to people, the grocery store, whoever we're encountering. all day long compared to someone else in class where they're only talking to kids their age, only talking to the kids that are inside of their like clique, because I mean, this is the way it is. So it's something that for me as a homeschooler, I was blessed because my parents they did it right. They made me talk to people, they made me handle stuff myself. But it's definitely something that we now have a leg up, and I'm glad you see it as well compared to everyone else. And that's another thing we harp on is just having the basic skills set you apart now. That's all you need is if you just have the basic skills, you're already separating yourself. What are some things that you guys focus on that as far as getting ready for careers? Do you have them maybe start early, getting involved with different things, focusing on one thing? What do you guys do at Unbound to get them kind of ready for that career they're looking to get into?
Yeah, so there's kind of two levels here because there's some career specific things. So if you think of Unbound, if we offer certificates for first, second, and third year, and then a master's certificate, that's kind of like a degree. That's sort of the equivalent. And then inside that, we offer tracks, which you might think sort of like a major. And so those tracks could be, we actually help students earn credits they can transfer into college, which strangely enough was what everybody did 3 years ago, which almost nobody does now. And I actually have a better program than I did 3 years ago, but that's just the market changing, which delights me. So that's fantastic.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then, we have like a digital marketing track, and we have a design track and a writing track and those kinds of things, and an AI track. And that's because those are places where people are needing skills immediately that apply to those things, right? But I'm actually pretty nervous about career preparation in this sense. I don't see how anybody can get a crystal ball and look ahead more than like 3 or 4 years for anybody's career. I've been in charge of, I've been working for this company since 2010, but we've owned it since 2020. And what I'm doing now is nothing like what I was doing in 2020. It's that fast. And what I'm doing now is nothing like what we were doing in 2021. And so almost every year, I feel like my job, my title hasn't changed, but my job has changed dramatically almost every year. And for instance, in 2020, we were trying to optimize web traffic. And in 2025, AI is stealing all of our web traffic. And so you have to optimize for something else. And that's like a fundamental core, like whether we stay in business type of thing or not. And we've had to pivot everything to sort of adjust to that. So when I think about that in terms of preparing my students, then, well, it's ridiculous for me to go, you know what, this is what you need to learn to be a great marketer. It's a bit of kind of two things. Can we give you some basics? Like there's some, there's good financial skills, there's good communication skills, there's good skills here that are going to be applying to all kinds of jobs. There's some specific skills in these tracks that we can give you because we're working with people who are actually professionals in these areas. And it's like, if I hired you tomorrow, and they're really training them because they want to hire them tomorrow. I mean, like, that's why they're in the track, right? And then the last piece is one that I get super excited about. And for your families, here's this like crazy built-in advantage to homeschooling that when I started, everybody laughed at us, and now is like the goose that's laying the golden eggs. And that is, the whole thing was like, well, how does your mom know how to teach you algebra? And we're like, well, she doesn't, but we kind of have this book, sex and math, and like, we really don't know how to do algebra either. And so like, yeah, but there's that, right? But now what's happening is that, well, what happens in a school? Well, it's an answers-based paradigm. There's a set of answers. We're going to give you a set of answers. You're going to regurgitate it for the test. I'm not against knowledge. And at elementary levels, that's important. And I classical education has proven some of that and all that. Okay, I'm good with that. But when we get to like practical stuff, we don't live in an answers-based world anymore. We live in a questions-based paradigm because we have access instantly to the world's answers. And now we can just talk it to our phone and it gives it back to us. Might be lying to us, but it's talking back to us, right? And so now it's like, okay, well, then how do you ask good questions? And how do you know if the answers you got are lies or not? Is the AI hallucinating? And so ultimately, then that means the critical skill is how to quickly and effectively master complicated information, which is a really fancy way of saying to learn. Well, as homeschoolers, you have to begin with because your mom and dad didn't know all the subjects. So at some point, they're like, here's the book. Good luck, kid.
Yep.
And so, and what looked like everybody sneered at us for like, well, that's not really a big deal. That's actually the critical number one skill now. I'm hiring kids and I'm saying, I need you to figure out Instagram marketing. They apparently changed their algorithm since last week. I need you to figure out how AI interacts with us. All of our web traffic is going away because they're all stopping at the search level thing, and Gemini or whatever is summarizing it for you. And they're like, well, how do you do that? It's like, I don't know. Nobody else does either. Like, you're going to have to figure it out. And so you're going to have to go find somebody who's doing it better and learn from them and translate this over here. And that's great because that's exactly what you've been doing your entire life as a homeschooler. And so all of a sudden, like the flaw is the feature, right? like this is you can't help but teach your kids this if you homeschool them because you don't know everything. And that's the best thing you could do for them. And some of what we do in Unbound is just to say, don't hide that. That's the most important thing. Let's double down on that. Let's actually put you in pressure-filled situations where you have to use that skill. And if you can get really good at it, I don't care what you're doing for a career. That's a transferable skill that every single industry on the planet is going to need. So
I absolutely love that, because you're right. That is in any industry, that if they can have that one skill right there, they'll be able to go into it, whatever position they're put into, they'll be able to find success in it.
And we have the Chick-fil-A joke, right? Homeschoolers work a lot of homeschoolers work at Chick-fil-A. Christian homeschoolers, now you got tons of people working at Chick-fil-A, right? And so I'm like, here working do you want fries with that? Is the bottom of the food chain, pun intended. But here's what's wild. If you work at Chick-fil-A, an entire industry is known for cruddy customer service. Nobody likes them, right? And then Chick-fil-A is known for exactly the opposite. So if you work at Chick-fil-A, well, there's a couple things you need to know. One, they push crazy volume through those things. I used to work for a company that we had Chick-fil-A as a client. So I've been to a lot of Chick-fil-A's, like push crazy volume through those places. So they're really organized. And then they have this crazy customer service. So if you are an organizational type person, you work back of the house, there's nobody that's more efficient at moving stuff than Chick-fil-A. And if you like people and you work front of the house, there's nobody better at teaching people to do good customer service than Chick-fil-A. Now, look, there is no business on the planet that doesn't need to know how to more efficiently move their stuff from operations and how to treat their customers well. Your business, my other business, like there's all an element of that in there. And so you can go do fast food. And if you're paying attention, if you can master some of those things, then it's just a matter of learning whatever your industry needs. And that's changing rapidly all the time. So it's not that it's bad to specialize. I think, do you guys do some marine work? Did I see
yes,
that?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, I mean, knowing more about boats than everybody else is an absolute asset, but your ability to get to know more about boats has to do with your ability to do the operations side and have good customer service, right? I mean, like then the knowing about boats compounds that, but it all starts with that. And no matter how much you know about boats, if you guys are jerks or if you can't get the stuff delivered, whatever your services are, it still doesn't work. So that's the transferable skill.
I love that. And then here we focus on a lot about becoming leaders, and that could be a leader of your house, but more importantly, being the leader of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What can you do, or what can you suggest to the homeschooling families that can maybe help? For me, if I have a guy who comes in, takes initiative, Miss Bethany here is a great example. She will take initiative. She will have an idea, run with it, and then bring it to me and say, hey, this is what I did. And
thanks for saying that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. But that is, for me as a business owner, the highest quality that I'm looking for.
Right.
What can kids do now, or when they're a little bit younger, or what can the families do to kind of push that to where the kid's confident in taking those steps, taking that risk of an idea that you had, going and running with it, and then bringing it and saying, hey, this is what I think, or this is what I did. Is there anything that you found that works to improve that skill?
Yeah. So slight digression here. I'm a history geek, so I like history, and I've always been curious about boats, ironically. So you probably know more about boats than I do, but because I live in the middle of Shenandoah Valley, so I know a lot about canoes, but I don't have much practical experience anything bigger in a canoe. And so an extension to that then is 18th century naval stuff. So, Napoleonic Wars, England's fleet, all that kind of stuff. So I've read historical fiction about that. I've read a lot about those time periods. And so I think that's really interesting. But there's a fascinating thing that you come across there. And that is the entire officer corps in the British Navy. Unlike the Army, you didn't purchase your commission. In the Army, you purchased your commission and got your rank. In the Navy, you have to earn it because you're running the most complicated machines on the planet at the time, right? And how do you start that? Well, you generally get placed there out of the aristocracy, and the age is typically 12 to 14. So a 12 to 14-year-old young boy was put on a ship as a midshipman. That's an officer. So he's over top of enlisted men. Those would be before the mast sailors, right? Many of them could be old enough to be his grandfather that were pressed maybe years ago because of England's long naval wars, right? And in combat, they're supposed to be over their section. They're supposed to lead those men in fighting. And then when they take prize ships, because remember, they don't want to sink the ship. They want to take it home because that's where they get all the money, right? They're the junior officers. So a prize caught on, so they could sail from England, take a prize off of the North American coast, and they're probably going to give it to a 14-year-old midshipman and put him in charge of taking the most complicated machinery in the world back across an ocean. And he's the commanding officer because they don't want to lose the better officers that they're going to use to capture the next thing, right? And that was not just considered normal for Britain. Every navy in the world that ran tall-masted ships ran that way. The United States, France, Dutch, the Portuguese, it goes on, and on, right? So I don't want to put kids in combat. But it's interesting that not that long ago, that was considered to be completely normative. So for a homeschool family, you live in a world where the school system says you're not really an adult till you're 30. You know, we don't expect you to do anything responsible until you're 3 decades in. Now, I have a friend who says nobody takes you seriously until you're 30, and that's probably good advice, right? But can you do something before then, right? Well, in an answers-based system, all you can do is take tests, which any kid that's smart enough knows, how boring is this? I'm just learning what everybody else already knows, right? As a homeschool family, you know, that was a long-winded way of saying you have this amazing freedom to take your son or daughter and say, just do this. I care less about whether you're successful and more about you just do it and you actually have the stakes of being able to succeed or fail. And think about, you know, if they were responsible for an entire ship, you know, just a few hundred years ago or 150 years ago, then they're probably more responsible than you think. So take a deep breath, you know, say a prayer for safety and patience, and give them responsibility and let them run that out. And don't be afraid to let them fail. Obviously, you know, we don't want them to get hurt, something like that, but don't let them, you know, get bruised and cut a little bit here. And then see where they go with it. And that can take, that's not like you should do it by letting them work on boats in your business or letting them work in my other business. Like, it's whatever your family does. It's not, there's no prescription here. It's like, what do you do and what are you interested in? Well, in your family culture, in your situation, in your neighborhood, in your community, what is there that you can give a lot of responsibility for and then turn them loose and then step back? And my guess is they're going to exceed your expectations, but they're also going to get this amazing ability to be sorry, you've got David. What's your name? I'm sorry. Bethany, right?
Yeah, Bethany. Sorry.
You just said it. And I was like, well, it's not David.
It's okay.
It is Bethany. And then I can't remember what it was said. So I apologize, Bethany.
No,
so
it's okay.
somebody like Bethany, and I have these folks, like we build a business with these people too, right? Where you say, I don't know how to do that. That's where the outcome is what we want. Go get it figured out. And then they do it. And man, as you said, David, that's just not great. That's like, I don't want to run a business with anybody else. I don't want to deal with somebody that I have to tell them what to do anymore because I never have time for that. Plus, I'm not as smart as I look. I generally don't know what to do. That's why I hired somebody. Yes.
Exactly. No, and that is, like you said, we focus on failing forward. Just don't worry about it failing. It's not a big deal. You know what I mean? And we're all going to find failures in our life. It's our ability to learn from those mistakes, but also to not be hindered or be upset or be too hard on ourselves. We should learn from them and understand what we did wrong. But failing is a part of life that we're all going to do. We might as well push the kids into it and let them understand that, hey, this is going to make you better. Like this little hiccup right here is going to make you better in the long run.
We have a little saying that we say failure is an option, you know, and it's just so weird that people are like, what? And so we have sweatshirts and we have people stop our students all the time and say, what do you mean by that? But you know, there's a little risk here. I don't want to train you that failure is okay. Right.
Yep.
But the point is failure is an option, lets you know that it's worth risking. And so we combine it with something else where we were in this situation where we wanted people to be excellent, but we didn't want them trapped in this, you know, you're only excellent if you become rich, famous, or powerful. Mm-hmm. And so we have a saying, we say, you know, we want to train you to be extraordinary at ordinary things. And that means failure is an option. And that right now you're on the hook to be as good as you possibly can at whatever you're doing right now. And that's hard because it may not be fun and exciting or interesting, but you have an opportunity to be excellent at it. And we find that if you're extraordinary at ordinary things, don't be surprised if extraordinary becomes ordinary. You know, I mean, that you get bigger opportunities, but it's also it's a drive to be excellent at whatever you're doing without being tripped up with this, like, well, I'll really do something important when I dig 400 wells in Africa or, you know, some other kind of massive goal, which is fine. We don't mind you shooting for big things like that. I mind you defining that as your only success. So.
No, I love that. Being extraordinary at ordinary things. That is a great saying. I'm sure you guys get stopped for sure because that would catch my eye. If I saw someone walking around or something like that, or failure is an option on a shirt, that would definitely.
Like, what do you mean? Yeah, so it's a fun conversation.
Now, you kind of touched on it a little bit because we're living in a changing world that's just, like you said, what worked 3 years ago isn't going to work today. Is there anything specific as sense of, besides just the figuring it out, or are you seeing any, I guess, avenues or career paths that you think kids should maybe start focusing on now more, or do you think they should go more to kind of figuring out what they're passionate about? For me, people always say chase your passions, and I do believe in that, but I'll be honest, I'm not passionate about cleaning boats, but I'm very committed to being the best person at cleaning boats with our company. You know what I mean? So do you believe more in like chasing down a passion or more just kind of figuring out an avenue that, hey, I can find success with this, I can find value in myself and bring value to others? Or are you for more of like chase down your passion, whatever you're interested in? Where do you guys kind of align on that?
So I appreciate, I love the question. I'm I'm trying to figure out how to be the least offensive as possible.
That's okay. Don't worry. You should have heard the guy.
I think this idea that, you know, I hear well-meaning adults. So here's the pattern I see. Okay, without trying to be too personal, anybody, I see well-meaning adults who mean well and love the students that they're talking to and the young people they're talking to, but almost always hate what they're doing. Okay, they don't like their job, and then they say, "Young man, young woman, like you know, son or daughter, do something you're passionate about, and you never have to work another day in your life." And that's such a big pile of stinking garbage to tell a young person, because what happens is that young person has only been around the sun a couple of times. And they're like, well, cool. I really like riding my bike. So clearly I should ride my mountain bike for Red Bull, right? Or, you know, I love singing, so I'm going to rock it on stage. That's what I'm passionate about. Or my favorite, you know, I'll be in Iowa and some kid says, you know, I want to do marine biology. And I'm like, but I don't like math and I don't like science. And I'm like, why? Because they want to swim with dolphins. Well, I mean, honestly, if I got paid to swim with dolphins, I may not be on this interview with you guys, right? or at least with a different title, right? And so, but the point is, they can only think about things that they're passionate about, the things that they're fun, right? And so, can you make a living doing those things? Sure. And I'm not running any of those things down, but most of us don't. And so then it's like, what? So only people that like at 6 years old knew they wanted to be a Navy SEAL or a fighter pilot or whatever. I call this the fighter pilot anomaly. You know, some fighter pilot stands in front of everybody and says, if you just work hard and follow your dreams, you can be like me. Well, that's bullcrap. And I don't know how else to say it. You can work really hard and graduate at the top of your class and go in the spinning machine for G-forces and find out that your body doesn't physiologically let you stay conscious and you're washed out. Or you can be at the top of your class, go through there, and the Navy needs tanker pilots, not F-18 pilots right then. And that's the way the system works. Does that mean your life is over, has no meaning, and this whole idea of working hard and pursuing your dreams is all garbage? Well, I don't believe that, right? Like, I don't think there's only like 5 or 6 jobs that are cool and everybody else is destined to cubicle, you know, farms. And I also don't think that you figure that out by what's fun, right? And so we actually, and this is what the book talks about, we talk a little bit about and say, look, here's some interesting stuff. When you have autonomy, like you get to decide how you do your work. And when you do work that you think makes a difference in the world, and when you do that in such a way that it pays your bills, almost always people love their work. And so, okay, well, that people are like, oh, that's fine. Well, how do you get to there? Well, you trade skill for autonomy. Nobody will let you do whatever. Nobody lets you run your business and fix boats or work on boats or detail boats if you haven't proven that you can detail boats, right? I mean, like they go to your website, they go to whatever, and they say, oh yeah, these guys, they have, you know, people that say they do a great job with boats. You can work on my boat, right? So you have to have skill for autonomy. And then they say you can work on your boat however you want because I'm paid you to do it. And then you have to have experience to do work that makes a difference. And that's where you figure out the world needs this. I'm good at this. Those things overlap, right? And so like I can figure that out. And that just takes going around the sun multiple times and doing stuff you don't like and applying failure as an option. And then generally those two things go together. Most of the time you get enough money to pay your bills, but not always. Sometimes there's really cool things that just aren't a job. You know, I mean, like they're a great hobby, but they're not a job, like boats, for example. For lots of people.
Take more money than you
working on is fine, but owning them sometimes a little different. And so, so we then tell our students like, so, you know, if you really want to find work that you're passionate about, and we want you to find work that you're passionate about, we want you to do things that you love, then I want you to start right now building as much skill as possible and building as much experience as possible. And I want you to know that I believe in 12-year-old midshipmen. So you can start that. I don't do teenagers. I do children and young adults. And I think the crossover is about 12 because that's not accidentally when most midshipmen started, right? So when you're a young adult, I want you to start building skill and experience. Now, here's the people who don't take you seriously. You're 30. I'm saying it might be 25 or 30 till you figure out where that stuff crosses. You know, like where you have enough experience that you're like, this is what the world needs, this is what I can do. And when you have enough skill that you're like, oh, people let me do things the way I want to do that. But there's a big difference if you're 18 and know that 7 years later you're going to have that versus you're 18 and at 22, you still have no idea what you're doing with life. And now you're thinking, I'm going to work for the weekend and try to get a job, let me retire early. And so I totally believe in doing work that you're passionate about, and that's possible for people. I just think that this idea that you follow some emotional driven, like I tell people, you know, people walk around, it's like thinking they just get struck with passion lightning, you know. I was like, I don't know. No. Oh, that's it. I want to be an accountant for the rest of my life. Like that just doesn't happen, right? I mean, instead, you're an accountant because you build up some experience and you build up some skill and you're good at it. And now you can run your own accounting firm and people come to you and ask you how to figure out their taxes and you love solving those puzzles. And you know that that helps those people and that enables them to run businesses that help your community run. So now you do work that makes a difference and you're good at it because you're good at numbers and figuring out financial puzzles. And those things stay together and you're making a living. And all of a sudden people say, accountants are boring. And you're like, actually, I love my job. Right.
Yep.
because those things are all adding up. So
without a doubt. So I know you guys focus more about project-based rather than, like you said, the test. How can homeschooling families kind of incorporate that into their journey? What would that look like more in a day-to-day, rather than just, hey, here's this book, I'm going to then give you a test, memorize these answers, How do families go about actually incorporating that into their journey?
Yeah, so I think two things. First of all, and all the students are going to moan when they hear this, there is a time where you have to have the test to know the answers, right? You're not able to figure out if ChatGPT is lying to you if you don't already know that Napoleon lost at Waterloo, right?
Yep.
And so you have to do that, and there's no excuse, there's no shortcut for that. And I tell students, like, I was happier when I passed college algebra than when I graduated because I knew I'd never do algebra again, for the rest of my life. And so, should you still take algebra? Yes, but the transferable skill is not knowing algebra if you're not an engineer. The transferable skill is making your mind and brain do something you weren't good at. And that's so you're going to learn something no matter what. So early years, there's some repetition, there's memorization, there's tests, there's learning, there's reading books, and that's 100% necessary. The project-based education younger is just, it's not so much school. It's that, do your kids have this opportunity to exercise curiosity, which is, first of all, are you willing to be brave enough to let them be bored? I think that's the biggest parenting asset you can have is boredom. And then are you willing to give them some stuff that will keep them from being bored without letting them get killed? And there's a balance there. That's a parenting challenge, right? Especially with young boys. So younger, it's like project-based education is like making them bored enough that they go out and take apart the old lawnmower to see how it worked, right? Not the one that's running, the other one. Or going out and fixing the one that's not running or whatever. Okay, that's a part there. And then as they get older, are you willing to give them responsibility that doesn't have answers? Hey, we need to do this. The building I'm standing in is a little 2-story shed that we built as the Unbound World headquarters. Our team mostly works remote. And so, I had my 15-year-old daughter and I was like, never put in laminate flooring. So we're going to figure it out together. And I need your help because I was really happy about finishing college algebra, but you're actually good at math. And so I know that if you measure that, there's less likely that I'll waste a bunch of this stuff, but also I don't know how this works. So we're going to have to figure it out together. Right. And she's really good at it. And then she helped me wire the whole building as well. And now I don't really like working in the building without Carrie Ann because she's that good, right? And so, but it's that kind of, are you willing to create the room for curiosity, which is boredom? And then are you willing to give the responsibility? And then again, allowing that failure is an option. And it doesn't have to be fancy project-based education. This is my curriculum. This is more life stuff. And so at Unbound, it's like, we get to the point where we're like, hey, I care less about whatever grade you're getting in the classes you're taking. And I want to know, first year student, can you take an idea from an idea to reality? Second year student, can you take somebody else's idea from an idea to reality? Third year student, can you work in a team and take an idea from an idea to reality? Okay, when I'm getting you employed at the end of your third year, and I tell the employer, this guy never ran before, ran a half marathon first year. Second year, worked in this business from a guy he knew from his church and built an entire website for him and started an e-commerce business for something they didn't have e-commerce for before. And third year, worked with a group of students and they shot a film that they took to an actual film festival and won some awards, all of which are true stories. And now you're asking if he'll be able to do your job. Yes, he'll be able to do the job you're asking. Like, you want to know if he can run operations of your trucking company? He can run operations of your trucking company. And you don't need him to have an operations degree. I just told you, this kid had the guts to run a half marathon, figured out how to code a website, and then worked with a team that produced a film that won an award. He'll be able to put the pieces together to get your operations figured out for your trucking company. So.
That is absolutely amazing. I don't want to take too much of your time, so I'll make the next couple of questions quick. Now, in today's culture, obviously, we're dealing with a bunch of nonsense. It's just a really kind of a different time than usual. How do you suggest to the young adults coming up to stand firm in their faith and their values? For us, it's all about figuring out what are your values, what's your family's values, and then not being afraid or pressure to bend a knee on those. I'm not here to tell you what your values should be, but whatever they are to you, you should definitely be firm in them. And you should understand that you standing up for them, you standing strong in them is not a bad thing. Even if culture is telling you it's a bad thing, it's actually a really good thing and a unique trait that a lot of people these days don't have.
Yeah. So isn't it an interesting time? And even, if we'd recorded this 3 months ago, it would have been different, or 2 months ago.
Yep.
It's such a fascinating time to be doing this. And so I think what I tell our students a lot is that, first of all, if you thought you were going to get a free pass, you don't understand how things work. Right. So I come from a Christian point of view, and the most empirical thing in the Christian point of view is that the world has fallen. Right. Can you look around and see bad things happening? Yes. Okay. We have an explanation for that. That's kind of the way we thought it was going to be. And so if you think you're going to get out unscarred, you're crazy, and you're not going to get out alive. Only one guy did that. And that's why we're talking about all this stuff. Right. And and he actually was dead first and then was alive. Okay. So there was a plot twist. And so we tell students, like, look, you just should know from the beginning that the evil you see in the world, you're not going to be able to fix. And it will impact you, and you're going to hurt, and you're going to go through pain, all that kind of stuff. And the only rational response to that is despair. Okay, now that we were all depressed, we're all on the same page now. Okay, but yet I'm telling you that we live in a hope that eclipses all that, because we live in one who's promised to make a new heaven, new earth, make all things new, right? So that's kind of a quick synopsis of the Christian faith. And so then we tell students, okay, well, so first of all, it's important to think big questions like that, because here's the deal. Everybody answers those big questions subconsciously or consciously. The problem is most of the people you run to in the world are sleepwalkers who have answered it subconsciously. They have answers in their head about why they were born, what their purpose is. And it could be the despair answers, right? They don't want to deal with that despair. And so, but it's those who are conscious to ask the questions that can make the big decisions. So first of all, consciously ask and answer those questions. That's an important thing right there. And then secondly, know that, having looked at all of that and understanding that this is not unusual. Like, you don't like where you live now. Well, we're not facing the Black Death. I think that's really cool. Like, I mean, COVID was really stunk, but it wasn't the Black Death, Yep. And so, yeah, Russia invaded Ukraine. I think that's highly unjust. I'm really glad that Germany didn't invade France and Poland again, and we're doing World War II, right? I mean, like, and so in other words, there's almost always a worse time to point to. And that's not to say things can't get worse. It's just like, let's have a little context here. There's never been a time, if you're in North America, there's never been a time where you've had more wealth, more opportunity, more potential, more possibilities, more free time, more resources. I mean, measured by anything. So first, let's start with a healthy dose of optimism and gratefulness and say, wow, thank you. And then second, as a Christian, I'd say, and I don't think you're here accidentally. You didn't get placed in the Black Death, and you didn't get placed in World War II. You're here now. So God, if you believe in a sovereign God, then you're here on purpose for a reason. And that reason doesn't have to be fame, fortune, and power. That reason is being extraordinary at the ordinary things that are in front of you. And, that's kind of the way God's economy works, right? I mean, people that are very quiet and sometimes unnoticed in history, there's the prophets, right? And then there's Peter and Paul and all those kinds of people, right? Well, there's a whole link of folks that got from the prophets to Peter and Paul. And without them, Peter and Paul don't exist. And so that's a critical link in history. And you're one of those. You could be Peter and Paul. That's really exciting. More likely, statistically, you're a link. But that link's essential. And so, and that is not just worthy work, it's life-changing, eternity-changing work. So you want a mission? I'm telling you one that's big enough to change his eternity. That big enough for you? You want a purpose? You weren't here accidentally. And you want sympathy? You're not going to get it, because this isn't the Black Death and this is World War II, right? And so roll up your sleeves and get to work. Whatever we got to deal with, that's what we're here to deal with. Let's get to it. So,
man, I absolutely love your mentality, dude. I absolutely love it. What can we do as an organization to kind of push and guide? And if you want to just use it kind of like a little sales pitch, so to speak, but just highlight Unbound. From my research, what I have found in it, I think I love everything you guys are doing. So what can we kind of do to kind of push people towards you guys? What age groups are you guys kind of focusing on? And what are some other things you guys do to just highlight what you guys do?
Well, first of all, if you like Next Era, I mean, we're kind of the next step of that past high school, right? So if you've got a taste of it, you're probably already prepped for us. And we probably owe you guys a big thank you, because if anybody comes from you guys, they probably have all the right attitudes and stuff like that. So at the high school level, our Equip program and Explore programs, they're for high school students. They're a curriculum that is all about the practical skills, task management, study skills, time management, communication, leadership, all the stuff that actually makes a difference, but then doesn't get taught academically. And it's designed specifically to ride on top of whatever curriculum you're using. So whatever you're doing, this is designed to integrate with it. And here's what's going to happen. The kid is like, Mom signed me up for what? They almost never sign themselves up, right? It's like, what? Mom, I was already taking algebra and this, and I got this too. And so if you're a student, I have a responsibility to be engaging. That's not the same as entertaining, but I'm promising you that when you start Equip, this should be engaging enough that you go, oh, this will help with algebra homework tonight. And so it's that kind of like a little extra investment can turn some big returns for you in terms of, what we can teach you and do. So that's the high school stuff. And then post high school, it's like, if you want to do something different than everybody else and you liked being homeschooled, come on, we're full of people that are doing stuff different, right? And so, yeah, we're project-based education. We're certificate-based. We're a lot less expensive than colleges. And here's what's cool about our Ascend program. I want you embedded in your local community. I don't want you to have to leave your family. I'm not saying that you have to stay, and I'm not saying there's anything morally better about staying. I'm just saying it's underappreciated what it's like to stay in a local community where you got extended cousins and aunts and uncles and friends and church members and community and neighbors and all that kind of stuff. So I want you embedded in your local community. And then I want to give you a national network. So Ascend works by piping in courses through this cool internet thing we have and content wherever you are in your local community. But 4 times a year, I send you plane tickets and I fly you all over the country. And you have a very intense experience for a week with a bunch of people. So when you're done, you're going to know people that you're absolutely bonded with because you have the same values, the same ideas, the same not only same backgrounds, but the same attitude of doing things differently. And so now you're in your local community, but you literally have an army at your beck and call that changes everything. And when I say changed everything, go to a lot of weddings. I go to a lot of things where people started businesses together, ministries together. We have this cool story where these 2 guys met and they went from Virginia up through Michigan, across the Dakotas, to Washington, down through California and back through Colorado. And they did a lot of backpacking, but when they weren't on a backcountry permit, they never stayed in a hotel because they stayed with Unbound families all the way around the country. And when they broke down the middle of nowhere in Montana, they caught alumni that they'd never met before. And the alumni were like, we can probably fix this on the phone, but if not, my cousin has a tow truck. He'll pull it over to your house. You can stay with us until we rebuild the engine and get you back on the road. Honestly, we're kind of hoping we can't fix it on the phone because I'd love to meet you. And so that's the kind of network effect that happens through being involved with something like Ascend. And if you're appreciating that through the stuff that you guys do, this is like, you could be super cool and have 2 networks, right? One that came from the stuff that you did before high school and in high school, and then one that came afterwards. So
that's I can't believe that actually happened though. That is crazy. And to have a network that strong too means that you guys really are uniting around those values. You guys are looking at the world, maybe not exactly the same, but with the same lens to where you can call an alumni who you don't know and say, hey, I need help. And that guy's coming up and showing up at your back door. That's not happening as some dude that graduates from FSU. That is so cool that you guys were able to accomplish that, and props to you guys for doing that.
That's what, all these colleges say, like we have this network effect, we have the alumni thing. And, some of the Ivies do, and what else does? The service academies. But that's kind of a narrow band, right? And it's not even all the Ivies because look, the Ivies work really hard to make sure that nobody goes to college has anything in common with each other. And so I don't believe, this is controversial. And I think our defense or Secretary of War said it recently, but I've been saying it before him. I don't believe this, diversity is our strength. I mean, no, that's just chaos, right? Unity is accomplished by people who come together from different backgrounds and then coalesce around an ultimate goal. And, whether that's your faith or your business or whatever it is, right? It's that's what you want. And you want people that are working towards and common to something. That's what's exciting. And so, if you go to a college where their whole goal is to make sure that nobody has any of the shared values, it's just chaos. But I'm going to say, look, you don't have to believe anything specific to come to Unbound. You just have to understand what we believe. So you're not surprised when we say Christian things. Don't be shocked, right? Then, if you want to argue with us, that's totally fine. We're totally cool with that. You just can't be offended by it. Or if you are, we're not going to be sympathetic because we already told you what we were, right? But then know that we're going that direction. And now when you get people that like, I did something weird that I'm gonna have to always explain what I did instead of going to college. I was homeschooled. You were homeschooled. We all have social problems. We care about working and getting things done and all that kind of stuff. And you find 100, 200, 300 people like that are just like you. Yeah. Then you go, oh, we could make a film. We could start a business. We could take a trip. And then they do those things. And then it gets really cool. So
that is awesome. Miss Bethany, you got any questions for me before we hop off?
I do actually. You were talking in the beginning about how peer pressure, I don't know exactly how you said it, but about peer pressure, how that makes public school students, I think you said something about how they have trouble interacting with people their own age.
Mhm.
And I found that whether it's people from my church or in my community, it's really hard to make friends with people who are my age, who went to public school. I can connect super easy with other homeschoolers, but then the public school kids, it's almost like they either don't make eye contact well, don't carry a conversation well, which then makes me feel awkward,
Right.
or there's just almost like a barrier where they don't want any sort of emotional contact with another human being. So do you think that is why? I've never been able to figure out why there's this odd barrier, but yeah.
I think, yeah. So there's a strange set of expectations, right, with institutionalized people, and I this is going to sound a little bit aggressive, and I don't. I guess I mean it. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but it may anyhow. I was homeschooled. I went to college. I took a criminology class in college, and we toured several local prisons. Okay, so I spent some time in prison, not as an inmate, but as somebody who toured. Right, so it's always really important to get that distinction in there. And so, and I had a friend who was a prison guard, so I'd actually had a little bit of experience with some of the prisons before. So I got to, okay. So keep in mind, I went to prison first, then I graduated. I was really excited about getting married, but I was really definitely didn't have a job. And so when the college said, do you have an admissions counselor? I was like, does that have a salary? And they said, yeah. And I said, yeah. And then I got started and I was like, what do I do? Like, so which is why we teach students to do something different now. And they said, we run around and you talk about things about the college and high schools. And I was like, well, this will be interesting. I've never been in high school before in my life.
Oh,
and so all of a sudden I graduated from college and my job, my job is touring high schools. Well, I get into high school and there's two things. I'm like, first of all, this place looks like a prison.
It does.
Like the only thing I've seen that looks like this, like the bell rings and people change and like they have to be in these different places. And I was like, this is wild. Like we know all these things that prisoners have problems with because they're institutionalized. And then we're doing that in high school. And the second thing was, I was like, you have the audacity to worry about my social skills. Like they got a bunch of goths over in the corner being completely freaky weird. And you guys were worried about my brother and I's social skills. Are you kidding me?
I agree. Yes.
And so there's this kind of, and so here's what I think is strange, Bethany, that gets more to the heart of your question and gets me off my soapbox, is that you have this situation where you have people in a false place. And what I mean by false place is like the rest of your life, you're never going to spend all of your time in a prescribed ritual with a bunch of people your own age, all doing the same things. And people think it's normal because they got institutionalized from 5 to 18, right? Yeah. But then 18 plus, none of the world looks like that anymore. Mm-hmm. And so there's a set of rules and a set of statuses that work in the 5 to 18 school system. And you're completely enculturated and you're completely trained in that for all those years. And then it's really hard to step out of that. And it takes many people many years sometimes to sort of lose that institutionalization, just like a prisoner that gets back into society, right? And so you have like their rules don't transfer to the rest of the world. A homeschooler is like, well, I've been living the real world the whole time. I'm seeing people different ages doing different things, working a job, doing this, going to church. And so I never had that institutionalization. So this is normal to me in a way that it's not to the public school student.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for answering that. So how would you suggest I try to bridge that gap?
Well, I have a deep belief that people are made in the image of God. Mm-hmm. And lots of people like to forget that because we have an enemy that wants us to forget it. Yeah. And so, and I don't want this to sound overly simplistic, but to see somebody and to see them as made in the image of God, there's a power of expectation and a power of pre-thought that sounds a little weird, but just give me a second, that I don't fully understand, but I see as really, really important. So quick divergence. I swear it makes sense. I grew up in the gun culture. I live in rural America. Everybody owns guns. We've owned guns, kind of stuff, right? And 21, everybody gets their concealed carry permit. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. And we don't have to go into that, but I know why people like concealed carry permits, because when you carry a hunk of iron on your hip and it pokes you in the ribs, you feel like you're part of the game. You're a sheepdog. You're not a sheep, all that kind of stuff, right? Not saying it's good or bad, but I'll also tell you something else. When you have a CCW, and you're walking down the street, you see people and you're assessing threat. Right? Yeah. It makes you feel alive. And that's what's part of is addictive. And it's not a bad thing necessarily, but as a Christian, I don't want to walk down the street and see a threat. I want to walk down the street and go, made in the image of God, 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 quite possibly inhabited by a demon right now. So I need to keep an eye on him. Right. Like, I don't want to be naive. Right. This is not about everything's great. This is like, no, there's still evil out there. Right. But I think so that's a roundabout way of saying, at heart, institutionalized or not, prisoner or high school student, public high school student, they're made in the image of God. And when you come at somebody and that's your first thought about them, I don't know where it goes from there. And I can't give you a prescription. And I can't give you a roadmap. But that attitude of saying, that's like, good. At heart, I'm interacting with an immortal soul here. And C.S. Lewis is everlasting horror and everlasting splendor. Yeah. And so the stakes are high enough that I'm going to figure out a way for them to know that I care about them at that level. And just thinking that does something that I can't explain that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
And my example for that is like, I despise airlines and I hate TSA, and I get along great with TSA agents and airline agents because as much as I hate them and how much I'd like to hate them, they're made in the image of God. And I really don't like United, and I really don't like American, but that doesn't give me any license to not like the lady behind the desk or the man behind the desk when they're telling me that they cancel for no apparent reason. So.
Right. Thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Good question.
Hey man, thank you so much for your time today.
It was great talking to y'all. I was delighted to learn about you. I spent some time going through your website, and then of course I was curious. So I went through your marine website as well because I like boats, and I thought that was interesting.
We definitely have to update both of them. We're working. My brother's been working the past like 3 days on the next era one, and then after we finish that website, we got to go update the Team Boys one as well. But
the darn things are always out of date. That's what I've discovered about websites. As soon as you take a big project and fix it all, it's like then it needs fixed again. So
yeah, you look at it and you're like, wait a second, that can be better. This can be better. Why didn't we think about doing that here and that? So it's been an ongoing cycle with them. But I really appreciate your time, man. And I love what you guys are doing and the stuff you shared today, man. It's absolutely amazing, dude. Absolutely amazing.
So you guys are in Florida, is that right?
Yeah, we're in West Palm Beach, Florida, but we service boats all the way from Fort Lauderdale to Stewart. I don't know how familiar you are with that. So we're like all of South Florida.
Okay, so I did a little investigating. I looked up your area code on your marine site. It's like I was like, these guys are on a coast somewhere, and they look a little California, but not quite. So let's see what this is. So anyhow, Florida made sense. Oh wow, I just drew a complete blank. Panama City Beach, Florida.
That's northwest of us. We're southeast. So if you think about Miami, you come up about an hour and like a half. You're going to be right around where we live. And then what we service is, I don't like driving in Miami, so we don't do Miami. But we go to Fort Lauderdale, which is about 30 minutes north of them, all the way up to the Stewart area, which you can imagine is like about an hour south of Orlando.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's so we do an event in Panama City Beach, Florida called Ridgeline. And for 3 days, we have 3 full days. We get there earlier and later, but we have 3 full days, and the kids have to take a project from zero to finished. And last year, one of the things was they wanted to build a boat and sail it. So at first I was afraid they're all getting eaten by alligators. And then there was 3 inches of snow on the beach. We got down there. So I was like, no, they're just going to all die of hypothermia. And we didn't get eaten or die of hypothermia, but I didn't worry about the alligators because I figured they were all frozen at that point. But one of the other groups they wanted to buy a car. They had a $1,500 budget. So we met some really interesting substance addicted people in Florida. And so they wanted to buy a car, fix it, and give it away. And so they were able to do that. And so like we had these 9 projects, and it was wild. And so anyhow, it may be possible that if, it's not exactly like we're not next door. I know Florida's long, but it'd be really fun if we could have you guys come up and meet some of our students and get a chance to talk to you guys and stuff like that. That might be really cool. So that's in January. So we'll have to keep that in mind. So
send us the dates, man. I'd love to. And you definitely met some interesting characters in Panama City. That's for sure. I know it's,
oh yeah.
You got the mixture of the really Cajun rednecks with just Panama City is a weird area. South Florida, we're a little more normal, I would say. But we do have our crazies down here as well.
We can talk about educational, right? I mean, like $1,500 trying to buy a bunch of cars that don't work. I mean, like we met some really interesting people. And then the one they thought was great, the one kid, Cohen, said it was great on the Facebook Marketplace picture. He said that was before they rolled it down a hill, ran it through a herd of deer, and parked it in the ocean for 3 days. He's like, that's what the actual car looked like, not the pictures on Facebook that were taken a long time ago. And so a day and a half in, they still didn't have any car. And so then then they found this truck, and the guy's like, oh yeah, you can have it. And then it turned out his title was with his ex-wife. And we're like, yeah, we don't really want to deal with that. And so then they finally got the Silverado. And so a day and a half in, they pulled the Silverado into the lot, and like ants, they like jumped all over it. And I was like, I'd already called the local junkyard thinking we're going to be in it, towing it there. But a day and a half later, that sucker was running. They called a local church. They found some lady who needed a car to be able to get to work. And then they had a mechanic that worked for the church that went to the church that was, did the final stuff. I got the paperwork done, and it actually worked.
Wow.
Great idea. What a great idea. The 3 days, a task that you're pretty much an unfamiliar area, and you got to complete it start to finish. That's an amazing idea.
It was wild. It was utterly terrifying from an administrative standpoint. It's like I ran every kind of nightmare scenario possible, but it actually all worked, and we had a grand time.
That's great.
No, definitely share the dates, man. I would love to come up there and see it and be a part of it. That sounds awesome.
Right. Yeah, I'll send you the dates and I'll send you the wrap up video. You can get a little look at what.
See what it came out with.
Great.
Well, it was great meeting you guys. I
Thank
just
you.
wish you all kinds of success. And if there's anything we can do to help you, we would be delighted to assist you in any way possible. So let us know. So.
That is awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We all got a little better with our social skills here today. So
yeah,
we're a little less weird.
Your promise, you promised in the beginning I'd be better, and I feel better already.
All right, my man. You have a nice day. All right.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.